Hello, welcome.
Here.
Now that you're here, I think we're ready to start.
Oh, wow.
No. So welcome, everybody. I just want to open up with acknowledging that the David Brower Center, it sits on the ancestral lands of the Chiclayo Ohlone speaking people. We pay respect to the Ohlone past and present, and we recognize that this land was and continues to be of great importance to the Síol tribes. So we would encourage you all to learn as much as you can about the history of the Ohlone people and the exciting and really inspiring work that's happening by many Indigenous groups around the Bay Area. And with that, I just want to say welcome to everybody that's here and everybody that's online. I'm Ursula Curry, the current acting president of the AIA East Bay, and tonight I'm really honored and excited to be able to launch a new phase of professional practice for our members. So we are focusing professional practice this year on topics that pertain to firms of various sizes, small, medium, and large. So for the month of May, we're focusing on smaller firms. And so this evening, our panelists are from AIA chapters in the East Bay, San Mateo, and San Francisco. So we're really happy to be forming alliances with the other chapters that are in the Bay Area. So I'm really delighted to be introducing the panelists today. Mahya Salehi, who's the principal of Mahya Salehi Studios in Walnut Creek. Hiromi Ogawa from Ogawa Fisher Architects in Palo Alto. And Rob Gerson, principal at Síol Studios in San Francisco. So I know them all through various means, and I'm really inspired by the work that they do and the people that they are. So I'm really pleased and honored that they agreed to be on the panel this evening. So the format will be, they will each present, spend 15 minutes talking about their work and things that are important to them as their principles. Then after that, we'll have some moderated questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So if you don't mind, maybe you can hold your questions until the end. Okay? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mahya. Okay. All right. And this is how you go for it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you, Ursula. And I'm really, really happy to be here. Honestly, 2 years ago, this wasn't even in the trajectory or the plan. So I think that's kind of where my story starts. I would say our office is a pandemic baby. We started in 2020, right before the shutdowns. So it created an interesting kind of story in itself by just the timing of it all being in a very unpredictable and unprecedented time. For the first few months, we kept thinking, okay, we're going to end the lockdowns in the next few weeks. And so it was just a very, it was an interesting time to be starting something. But I think that what it did for me in particular is that there wasn't a ton of opportunity to come to events or like start brainstorming with other architects. Everybody was kind of trying to survive and doing their own thing. So in a sense, I was relying a lot on intuition and just trying to feel out what makes more sense for me as an individual working in the field that I've always kind of wanted to be in. And taking that experience from the previous offices that I worked with as project manager and thinking through like, what do I like and dislike about that dynamic and what do I want to change? And it really started off as just, me, the timeline being in 2020, it was just me and my laptop and my dining table. And I started getting drafting help when I started, getting more work. The projects that I was doing at the time were kind of low risk remodels and additions, scopes that were a lot smaller than what I was used to doing at the office that I worked with. And at the time, I was very comfortable, because I had no overhead, I had no expenses, and life was good. Slowly started getting more clients, bigger projects, and the first thing that I did, being in the pandemic, I wasn't comfortable, starting to find new hires or, working with people that I didn't know seemed like another unknown venture. So I started calling friends from college, and my younger sister actually also is an architect. So the team grew to 4 people in 2021. The other 2 being my college friends from a decade ago, who are great architects, and I kind of knew how to work with them. And then my sister. And then 2022, we were a team of 5, and we had our first intern, and now we're a team of 7+, which means 7 full-time employees, and we have consultants and interns and people coming and going. I don't have a lot of text in my presentation. There's only 2 slides that I have writing on, but I think that also kind of comes to generally my approach to business, which is trying to think about some values that I care about deeply, and then every decision that I need to make as a practice on the day-to-day, I go back to those set of values and try to think through what kind of gets me closer and more aligned with that. So I would describe our work as being very much about the atmosphere and not a specific style. And when I show you our projects, I think that would be more evident. Experience of the client. We're very client focused in our practice. And we love the idea of collaboration. So oftentimes, especially now that we are growing, we're looking at the clients a lot more than we're looking at the project opportunity, and trying to think about who we want to work with that we feel could push us in the creative direction that we want to go, and we have that mutual appreciation. The photo here is a little old. Like, we have 2 more people that unfortunately we haven't had a group photo together yet. And a little bit about our studio.
We're having a little technical glitch online. So let's go for it. And see the slide in advance.
That's not good.
So let's look at text.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, sorry, folks online. Not much has happened since. A little bit about our studio. One of the main factors that kind of transitioned me from being a freelancer to actually having a business was this opportunity that I felt like I could be a representation of what I believe to be an underrepresented sector in architecture, which is women of color, and being able to show that, or kind of, to be able to kind of just know that there are hopefully younger architects who can see that, there's a place for them in this field. That was a big motivator for me. And so when I was kind of creating this team, it was very important that my team also reflects those values. And so, I would say we're a group of minorities, and we're loving it. We're multilingual, and this depth and interest in the way that we go about our projects, and the way that we handle things internally as a team. This photo that you can see on the slide is actually a good little story in the first year, in our first full year in 2021, where we had a team of this size. Everything that we were making that was a surplus to this great team who was working really, really hard, but I couldn't really offer them a monetary kind of bonus that was significant enough for it to make sense. But on the other hand, we had paid for so many things to build the business that we had a lot of credit card points. So what I offered to them was, let's go to the World Expo in Dubai, and I can get you flights, and I can get you the hotel, and we can go to this once in a lifetime opportunity like the World Expo. If you haven't been, I would say it's like Disneyland for architects. It's like the most invigorating and inspiring space. So I think, when you're starting out, it's, you try to get creative. And so if you can't offer one thing and you still value, you want to show appreciation and value for your team and have those kind of team building moments, there's other ways to think about it. And Dubai is to this day one of our favorite memories. But it was something that just kind of came about from this idea that we want to do something, but we don't have money. How can we do something with using what we have? So, I don't know if I can.
Try another key. Which try clicking the screen.
With the
Okay, sorry.
the big.
Okay. So going into the few projects that I've selected to kind of share with you today, I tried to select projects that have more of a practice management story to them and they're chronological. So the first project is one of the projects that I did completely by myself in that first year. And this was, at the time, a lot of questions that I get is like, how do you get clients when you don't have a portfolio to show for it? And I think, that's where I really played on my motive, like my desire to go above and beyond for these clients. And they could see that, and they saw value in that. And then using all the tools that I had at the time, which were renderings and drawings, you can see the comparison of like the before the rendering and the final building. And then once that building was done, we used those photos to then get the other project and say, well, look, we can get the end product very close to the rendering that we offer. And so I think like building on the business kind of slowly in the sense of every project trying to put everything that we had into it and thinking about all the extra time that we're spending that we're not necessarily getting compensated for. That for me was my marketing effort in getting the next one and the next one. Another kind of earlier on example, this project was an addition and a remodel, and you can see the existing photo of the building on the top left corner. And this is a house that you've probably all seen around, like it's a very kind of standard typology that you see in South San Francisco and San Bruno, and they always bothered me for like the way that they are. And this client, they didn't ask for us to reinvent the facade of their home. They wanted an addition and a remodel, but we spent a ton of time coming up with what you see on the right, which is how do we take this without a big budget and just make it more interesting and sophisticated architecturally. And again, the time spent attracted more projects of the same kind of background and type where clients could now visualize or kind of understand how we can take something that isn't as interesting and really think about the design and do something significant with it. On the practice management side, you could see like I included the addresses of the projects because we have projects kind of all over the Bay Area. And the reason for that is going back to those values and being client focused. When a client approaches us, which is the case all the time now, we don't do any marketing. So these clients, for instance, found us through some work they saw online. I felt very connected with them in the first interactions that we had. And I love the story of they inherited this house from their parents. They want to live in this home that has a very like strong sentimental value for them. Even though, again, a very typical looking house, I found that the story and the interest of kind of taking the project as this inheritable structure was very appealing. So even though it's out of our way and a jurisdiction we hadn't worked with, it was worth that extra work created there to be able to take on that client. So that's kind of, when I talk about client focus, it goes both ways where we are focused on giving them the best service we can, but we also really care deeply about who they are and how they enrich our experience as architects and where they take our business. Carolina is a project we completed in San Francisco. We were the interior architects on this one. So, and all the interior details that you see were designed by us. And I love doing interior architecture. For us as a business, we are an architecture and interior studio. Interior has always been a passion, but more specifically looking at it from a practice management aspect, interiors have such a quicker turnaround time, from the time you start a project until you get photos, it could be less than a year. And so when you're starting and you don't want to wait multiple years for a new construction residence to be permitted and built, having some interior projects to be able to show your design skills and to be able to kind of, continue honing your skill set in terms of constructability and trades and vendors, that has been a really good opportunity for us as well. And Sterling is a project we did in Berkeley Hills. We actually finished permitting this one last week. It's a SB9 lot split, hillside construction. Again, I think like it's something that might scare a lot of people away from taking on a project, but the time invested in being able to do these first projects in the different kind of locations or the different kind of requirements of that this one has. For instance, this is our first SB9 project, but I feel like it's not going to be our last by any means, and we learned a lot in the process. So I like the idea of diving into my business the way that I do with a project, where it's like I kind of know what I want out of it, and then I'm going to figure it out as we go, and we're going to kind of, you know, prioritize what values we have in the clients, and then really work hard on the rest. This project is what I love about this one is that we designed the house that you see in the background for the client. And once it was all permitted and they started construction, they came to us asking if we are interested in thinking through the landscape with them. And at the time we were really, really busy. And I asked one of our junior staff members if they can kind of spend some time on the design. And I think that the end product ended up being one of our favorite things that we've done, even though it's far from what we usually do. And we collaborated with a landscape architect on all the specifics, but being you know, just not shying away from a new challenge or a new kind of creative opportunity has been very fruitful for us, and it's allowed our studio to all participate in the design, where there isn't a sense of hierarchy that, you know, only the project managers get to design and everybody else is drafting. Everyone is very much involved in the process. And being able to go from something this kind of design forward and interesting, and then go into construction documents, and being able to have that balance in your workload, and that kind of, you know, the different types of projects that you're working on in a week, I think helps our team not burn out and still feel creative and feel like they're constantly, you know, being challenged. Washington is a new construction project that is breaking ground next month in Fremont. It's on an empty lot, and the way we got this project is that first project I showed you, the remodel. And they were driving by and they liked the house enough to look up who was the architect and contacted us. And what I love about those kind of proven concept ways of getting clients is that the client already wants to work with you. So you're not as much like selling yourself in terms of your value. They already have a perceived value, and you're talking through about how you can work together and how you can help each other. So it's made my life a lot easier, and I think that all the time that was spent on the design on those earlier projects, we are seeing the results of it now. And on that project, we're also the interior designers, so it's been really, really fun to get that full, you know, range of architecture and interiors. And right now we're working on the interiors as the project is starting construction. We've also done some development projects. This one, I'm going to go really briefly just to say that the client has no expectation that there would be like models and renderings, and all of this is really our team internally wanting to figure this out in mediums that make sense to us. And of course, you know, again, this builds like a relationship and appreciation that's very meaningful between the client and us, where they can see that we are not just trying to get to whatever is the scope definition, but we really do care intensely about how does this feel, you know. And I can say, like, all of the projects that I'm talking about as being passion projects that we've spent way too much time on are supplemented by smaller projects that are helping our bottom line financially, right? So I think that the way that I think about my business is that there's this foreground that each project has its own contract and its own fee, but then where I am is I'm on the background, and all of that is coming to the same bank account, right? So in the sense that if there are projects that I feel passionately that you know, these are like the first that we're doing and we want to spend more time on the design, there's always projects that we're more comfortable doing, and we've done so many times that we know we can have a higher profit margin, and those could supplement that effort. So I think seeing your business is more of all together and an accumulation rather than isolated projects help get you to where you want to be in a more efficient way. And I'm going to go really quickly through the commercial projects. The commercial projects that we've done so far have been through our residential background. We recently completed a coffee shop in Berkeley. This is on the north side of Berkeley campus, so right across from the Berkeley Cal campus gates. The client here, they knew we haven't done a coffee shop before. But again, we sold the hell out of our passion for this and the way that we really wanted to do something meaningful and we were going to spend the time on it. And we ended up designing this very elaborate fabric ceiling in Rhino that utilizes 700 feet of tracks and fabric. And the client loved the idea, but they were, they could afford all the materials and it was a pretty cheap kind of it's fabric and current tracks, but where they couldn't kind of make it happen was with labor. And I remember telling the team, if it can't happen, it can't happen, and we'll just kind of go with something simple. And I went on vacation, and I remember getting a call from my team and that they spent the entire weekend with the coffee shop owners building this ceiling because they cared about it, because they felt invested that this is their project and they didn't want to see something like a reduced version of it. So despite my, effort in stopping them from working on the weekend, they worked multiple weekends with the client, and you can go see this coffee shop now and the ceiling. It's all installed, by the team. And I feel like every time we go there, everybody's really proud and they can see the parts that they kind of, did with a little more detail, and there's a little crease there. So it's just really interesting to get that hands-on experience out of it, and the final product, you can definitely sense that there's a ton of time spent on the design. Another project, this one is in Sonoma County that's recently completed. I designed an ADU for this owner years ago, and they called me when they were when they were starting to work on this restaurant. They said, "Hey, we already know we like working with you. And are you willing to take this project on? We need an architect for the TI and we want to work with you on the interiors." And again, we haven't done a restaurant project before, but you got to start somewhere. And so we again went all in with the design. We designed this really elaborate tile flooring and really thought about, this is a Mexican restaurant. So thinking about all those concepts and textures and color palettes that we can draw inspiration from. And this is the final restaurant that we photographed actually just a few weeks ago. And again, that tile layout that you can see was not in the budget. No one was paying us to go count these tiles 10 times over in the office before we place an order, but it was something that meant more to us, and we were willing to make it work with the way we distribute funds internally to spend that time needed to get that done. Lastly, Zaytuna College. If you're not familiar with Zaytuna, they are an Islamic art college, and they're at the highest elevation in Berkeley. So if you go up Marin, they're the highest point, beautiful views, and their campus is open to the public, so feel free to walk by. The way we met this client is that I designed the house for one of the board members, and when they needed an architect, he put our name in the mix and set up a meeting with me and the president of the college. And again, I went to that meeting. I hadn't done a college project before, but we took a lot of enthusiasm there, and they're an Islamic college, and that's what I studied in school. So it felt like a good fit, and we started with a small project, and now we have, I think, 7 or 8 different projects on campus with them. One being the dormitories that were completely gutted and they needed a 2-person occupancy. And so we kind of came up with some creative ideas to make that happen. We designed lecture halls that are currently being installed, and lots of ideas there, but I want to be brief so we can have more of a conversation. And their gardens. So again, something that's out of our comfort zone, but it felt just like another creative endeavor and something that we can kind of figure out as we go. And I had the confidence in our research ability and our creativity to be able to do the project successfully. Yeah, let's do it. We're on the last slide. I want to kind of talk to you about your questions more. What are we up to now is just more of the same, I guess, residential projects. We're doing bigger residential projects, and right now we're at a place where we have, clients that are waiting to be able to work with us, which I find to be like the absolute dream. And I think that was all again to say that when you put in the dedication and you do something out of love and passion, I think you end up seeing the benefit of that. And that concludes my presentation. Lots of work. Thank you.
My turn. Hi, my name is Hiromi Ogawa. I'm with Ogawa Fisher Architects. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ursula, for inviting me to this panel. I'm actually the current board president of AI San Diego County, so I want to give a little shout out to my members who are probably here online with us, and also a shout out to my team. I just saw a glimpse of one of them in the audience as well. So I just want to give a shout out and say thank you for being here. All right, so I wanted to share a little bit of my personal journey and the things that I've learned along the way. So there might be a little bit of duplication, but hopefully not a ton. So I am Japanese. I was born in Japan, in Tokyo. And then when I was in elementary school, we moved to Michigan. When I was in junior high, we moved back to Tokyo. When I was in high school, we moved to Kentucky. So there was a lot of back and forth going on. I was always making stuff, designing stuff, trying to figure out how to make it on my own, but didn't know quite where or how to channel what I understood to be sort of creativity. Meanwhile, I was bilingual and going across the country, and so I sort of felt that I was supposed to take advantage of my bilingual skills. But then when I was in high school, I lived right by the University of Kentucky, which has an architecture school, and they had a summer workshop there. So I took the course in my junior year, and as part of a field trip, they took us to a house that was under construction. And it turned out that the house was actually designed by Jose Uberi, who is a protege of Le Corbusier. And I don't know if you've been to Life in Kentucky, but it is ranch burgers all around. And so in the midst of all of this, you see this house and you're like, what is this? Like, how can you do this? How is this possible? And so I was just completely hooked and just walked around. It was under construction at the time, but I just thought, oh my God, if I can do this, then. So I knew right then and there that I wanted to design, and I wanted to design. So the reason I like homes is because of the scale. I think it's very relatable to me. It's very intimate. I love the details. I love the scenarios that I can read with people coming in and out of rooms, being together, being apart, being quiet, being noisy, like all of those things in this kind of tiny space really just gives me a lot of joy. And so that's always been sort of my passion. And also since early on, I knew that I wanted to start my own firm. And I attribute it to a couple of things. I think that my dad was always looking for a really large corporation, and I really never saw myself in that path. And also because I was moving around a lot, I think that I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. And so I think that having my practice was a way of creating a space for myself. And so that was something that I think was important to me. Okay, so I knew I wanted to start my practice, and then early on in my career, I went to an AI San Francisco lecture by a presenter who was talking about starting their own firm. And it was really insightful, and I was really young, so I was just absorbing every word he was saying. So one of the things he said was, okay, there's 3 things you can do the best in. Best in service, best in cost, and the cheapest, and best in time. And he's like, everybody wants to be the best in all 3 of these things, and that's how you fail. And so to be successful, you gotta perform. So I took that to heart and, wow, this is what I'm gonna do. And I wrestled with it for a few years and I decided that best in service was probably the best match for my personality. What I didn't know at the time, and it kind of that I grew into, was that being good at service actually means that you are being sort of honest and transparent and collaborative in the way that you approach things. And that by nature actually makes design successful. And so I think that best in service and best in design in ways of for us. The other thing that he said was that if you get to a point where you need an employee, your first employee should be better and smarter than you. And I also took that to heart. And so I thought, okay, so for the first 3 years, I was just by myself. And then after that, Lynn joined me, who was a coworker of mine at Síol Studios. And by the way, she's still better and smarter than me. And we're still together. Okay, so where am I now? Okay, I'm going to share some things that came to mind as I was preparing for this. So for me, having my own business means that everything that I touch and see and do kind of gets absorbed back to how my practice is. So I'll be like on an airplane with me in an in-flight magazine and it's talking about like other industries or other cultures and things like that. And I'm always thinking about, oh, okay, well then how does this matter for my company? And it's something that I really, I think, enjoy doing. It's kind of, how people say that like, oh, it's your business, it must be your baby. And it's totally true. I have a child of my own and I kind of know what that's like, where all of a sudden everything in your life is through that lens all the time. And I think that with my business and also with motherhood, it's the same thing. I'll be at a doctor's office, for example, and I'll think about a study that I read where they were talking about the relationship between bedside manners of doctors and the frequency of malpractice suits. I'll go, okay, well then how does that relate to architecture in terms of how we provide a service and what our relationships are to the client and whether or not you are more likely to have lawsuits, for instance. And so these are the types of things that I'm always kind of going through my mind. And I'm going to show you some pretty slides of my projects in the background. I'm talking about some other stuff. So running a small firm can definitely be challenging because of the nature of being small, like when project will unfold and you feel like there's a big hole in your revenue, for example, or somebody's on leave and you feel like you've lost a limb. Like it's just sort of, a roller coaster thing. But at the same time, I feel like small firms can be nimble. If you create a culture where everybody is willing to do everything, then I think it's really exciting because you can get to do different things all the time. And then when somebody's sort of out of the picture temporarily or permanently, everybody else can step in because they're familiar with all the things, whether it's IT, marketing, business development, accounting. We sort of want to make sure that everybody knows at least a little bit of all of those things so that they can pick out and we can work together. Lynn and I are business partners, like I said, and I think we make a really good team. We are similar, but also very different. She is a really great designer, but she's also very methodical. She's great with numbers. She thinks really far ahead. I'm like the moment person. My eyes are way bigger than my stomach. I say yes to almost everything, and I get myself in trouble doing that. And then I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, so I don't want her to stop. And so I feel like she sort of balances me, but we still align on a lot of really important things like design intent or how we should run a practice, what's important to us in terms of the ideal client. And so I feel like the most important things we really align on, and then everything else we sort of complete each other. So I find that our partnership is really successful. So currently we are a firm of 6. There's Lynn and me, we're licensed. We have 3 designers who are working towards licensure, and then we have an interior designer. And it's a really nice balance for us. It kind of works with the project load that we currently have. Lynn and I talk about being maybe up to 8 or so, but I think, bigger than that because we like to keep it small. So in terms of takeaways from my journey, I feel like there's no perfect timing in terms of starting a practice if you're interested in doing that. I would listen to your instinct. All I know from my experience is that you're never going to feel ready. And so you kind of have to jump in. Try it, but don't force it. I think we were talking about it, but like in the beginning, it's very low overhead. And so in a way, there's very little risk. Try it out. But if it feels like you're forcing it, then you can take a step back and, go look for another firm. There's always opportunities there. And then recommendations and referrals, like you were saying, Maya, I think is always a good sort of barometer of whether or not you're on the right track. So after the first or second project that you do on your own, if you feel like you're getting the referrals and the recommendations through that, I think it's always a good way to sort of gauge like, oh, okay, I'm getting the response that I need to be able to grow. I like to absorb information and resources from other people. And so I learned a lot of things before starting my practice that I felt was important and I wanted to share. One is that to always have a contract. Always have a contract, even if it's a tiny project, even if it's with your friend. You always want to have a contract. You always want to have liability insurance. Even if it feels expensive, super important. And I also early on decided to form an S corp so that we could separate our personal stuff from our business. And so that's been a really nice separation for us too. Let's see. I'm also really grateful to be part of a larger community. I make a point of creating small groups that I can really sort of talk to in a frank way and get feedback from, and it kind of changes throughout my life in terms of what I need. So it might be women-owned business owners, or it could be small firms, or it could be working moms or something like that. But I always found that, especially as a small firm, you feel isolated at times. And so looking for those groups in which you can really bounce ideas, I think is really important. And finally, one of my sort of key takeaways, and when you look around and you see all of these talented architects, how can you ever, be up to this caliber? I actually think that it's okay not to live and breathe architecture all the time, because I have found for myself personally that exploring and keeping yourself like sense of wonder, staying flexible, doing stuff that you love, all of these things will naturally inspire and inform your work. And so I actually sort of selfishly like to be able to do things outside of architecture because I feel like it always comes back. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
I want to start. My name is Robbo, and I want to start by saying thank you to, first of all, having phone, and thank you, Maya and Romy, you're such a great women like that a lot. And I'll get into a brief description of my firm. I am one of the three principals. We're Síol, pronounced Síol. Gave it work for speed, and I've joined. Two partners actually set up the firm, Jeff and Kevin, my partner. They set it up at an equally troubling time, right 2007, 2008, when the recession hit. So they struggled through a few years of pop ramen and peanuts. But one of the main ways they stayed afloat was going to the San Francisco decorator strip clubs. If anybody's familiar with that, is get a room and you get to do some work. So they managed to score a couple of rooms, they scored a couple of clients, and it kept them afloat. It was actually really nice. I joined in 2012 when everything was starting to become more rosy. People were busy. People were the recession was ending. There's money flowing. I was leaving a firm, and they asked somebody that had been working with design loans was retiring, and so I was licensed at the time, and they lured me, which was great, and everything was took off like gangbusters. It was really nice. Some of the things that we struggled with as a young firm is that none of us really had a typical classical career. I didn't go to college. I went to City College only. I don't have a degree. Kevin and Jessica were looking for an English cabinet maker here in San Francisco, and so we all didn't get the practice management, practice establishment instruction from anybody in doing what we were doing. So we were winging it the entire time. We had this small office you see here in the Fillmore. It's the only one bedroom, and at one point we had, I think, 8 people in there, hustling and making it work. It was actually quite exciting time. You know, one of the, I'm going to double down on what you were just talking about is, you know, money is a thing that architects and designers in general are afraid of, in my experience, and we fell in that group. I'm a little more aggressive, and so I kind of broke this out of that by saying, of course, we're going to charge you everything. Yes, don't cut anything from that bill. We did that work. We earned that money. We gave them those ideas. They're paying us for our thoughts. So that's something that's incredibly valuable, I think. One of the things that I think set us apart was our ideas. Kevin and Jessica, during the quiet time, they spent a lot of time on white papers. That's when they started experimenting with, you know, paths of psychology and design processing. They wrote white papers on integral theory, and that's when we really became the origin of us being an integral practice. So now we are architects and interior designers. Jessica is the interior design professional, and Kevin and I are the architects. It's been going pretty smoothly. We've had the benefit of some very nice benefactors. By benefactor, I mean one client that gives us lots of projects, which is a blessing and a curse, right? Because you have one client that puts you all this work, and then you constantly have the nagging fear. What happens if this client disappears? What happens if we piss off this client? What happens if? So luckily we were professionals and did good work, and managed to deliver great design to somebody that wanted our ideas. It's not very often you get clients that want your ideas, so that was quite special. You know, as we developed our practice, we always had an eye on, you know, who we wanted to be, and we wanted to be this firm that was, you know, open, transparent, and honest. Because when that honesty is one of the words that we use a lot for describing our practice, because we are honest with materials, honest with ourselves, honest with our staff. It's here. But it's one of those things that you can be honest with yourself and your clients. You know, open dialogue is what gets things sorted out. But we're also honest with ourselves about our eyes on the future. We wanted to grow. You know, we wanted to grow, and we wanted to get into bigger stuff. You know, and with that, you have to get there. You have to have the project, but you have to have good employees. And so early on, we decided that, you know, from our past, working with difficult bosses, working with good bosses, you know, we all defined our own ethos that we wanted to create within the office, which was quite refreshing because we didn't get to experience that, a boss that really took care of us. So one of the things that we focused on is lifting them up. And you talked about this a little bit as well, like, you know, we want our staff, every one of them, to be the smartest people in the room. Like, we have no false expectations of everybody working with us forever. So I train everybody to be smarter than me. That is my actual phrase. I want you to be smarter than me. So with that, you know, we count on them to lift us up and be our face in front of the clients. One of the fun projects that we worked on recently was with Sonic, and that's from Connected. So Kevin, one of the architects, he's amazing. And so something I've always preached is you get your work from Connected. Because I did go to a traditional university, most of my friends aren't architects. So that's something I preach often is if you don't get work from college buddies that were also architects. So I always encourage people to expand their friend pool outside of architects, because it's quite common for you go to an architect party, 20 of the friends there are architects. So one of the hallmarks of our success was planning and meeting. So as we grew, we established regular meetings, and they were always, we didn't break from the meeting schedule. There was never a project or a busyness or act of God that could keep us from the meeting, because the meeting is really our trajectory. And for planning, we anticipate the future, we line things up. It was quite, it was a calm in all of the storms. We're going to have our meeting, we're going to stop, we're going to talk about it. And then, you know, that's actually one of the best ways that we were able to plan for the pandemic, is because we were all aware, we were listening to the news, and we took our time, planned for it. We bought everybody computers, and as soon as it hit, everybody had their own laptops, and we were at home on day one, being active, which was actually quite refreshing and calm by itself in the middle of all the chaos. So I'm not that right there. One of our strong suits is working with others. So we avoid, or we are anathema to being the architects that know everything and design everything and expect it to be implemented as such. We are always aware that there are other people in the room that know as much as us about something else. So, you know, this here is an example of a metal worker and a woodworker at the same time, where we designed this this bookshelf that's got all walnut, but with brass inserts. It's actually quite, and then some black and steel rods to hold it up. So we had an idea of what we wanted, and had to go through several iterations with this fabricator who helped us get it to where we wanted, because we knew what we wanted, but we knew that we couldn't tell him how to do it perfectly. So we had to lean on their expertise, which isn't novel, but it is sometimes overlooked. One of the things that came from this is, you know, more projects, right? As you know, we executed this one so great that the client brought us more. This is actually the same client parent house, which actually turned out really well. If I can bring your parents in, they must like you. I want to back up because I wrote myself a note here that I dropped earlier. It's great to get outside help as you're growing. Because when I was younger, I actually went to an AIA seminar. Anne was one of the speakers, and she helped me told me, it's like, one of the things that you should do is get marketing. I never would have, but I trusted and respected her, and we started and created marketing budget and had it to this day. And it's helpful tremendously. But one of the things I hope many of you here, there's a group of archives. It's out of a small group of architects here in the East Bay. If you want to find me, I can help you sign up for it. It's basically an email group of people that ask questions, and it's an open forum. There's another one in San Francisco for the AA Small Firms Committee, but it's just all small firms asking questions. Hey, go to Crystal said this, have you guys had this experience? Or, I'm trying to excavate on the soil side, and what's the ordinance here? Asking questions of others is not shameful or embarrassing. It's actually, it helps. Everybody's been there before. So, back to the first step. This is a collaborative. I'm going to focus on that for a minute because I've always been fast and loose, and I will try something with the expectation that it's going to break. I'm going to learn something from it a little bit, like modern internet theory. But I want to try things. I want to see how it works. And then, so this is me here working on stuff in the field with one of my contractors because I trust him to help me find the right solution. I could design it and he could build it the way I designed it, but he's built it before, so he can help me get what I want to work better. So going back to what I was talking about before with sacred space, when we're working with clients, we want to create space for them that is unique. And sacred. And that is something that we created early in our firm, and it's something that we're going to hold on to for eternity. So right now we're a small firm and we're working on single family homes mostly, but we have an eye on the future and we want to work on bigger projects. However, I think this core ethos is something that's going to stick with us forever. Sacred space doesn't have to be for a single family. Sacred space can be sacred for a large group of people. And so that's kind of where our minds are now, is towards the future. We've been in practice now for 15 years. We're not in any danger of retiring anytime soon, but we do spend time thinking about our legacy. Where do we want the firm to go? And that, going back to the origin of Síol, we didn't want our names on the firm. Well, Kevin and Jessica didn't, because it was an idea. And if it had somebody's name on it, then it becomes that. And as Síol, as a seed, it's an idea. It's an idea that can grow, and we have to be there. And so we are currently, Jessica, the interior design principal, she moved on to New York to establish that office. And we have our eyes, on more horizons. And so the future is what we're always looking for. That's basically one of the best parts about our meetings, is the future. They're not just what's the fire today. It's more about the future. Because if you don't think about what's coming, you have to react. And that's always our strong suit, is being prepared for what comes next. And with that, right now, I think there's possibility. We're trying to, take our ideas outside of just a single family home and into the bigger world. So we're trying to we're trying to change our workplace. We want to get into some public work that can be seen and viewed and enjoyed by others. And that's the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really interesting perspectives from one principal owner, two principal owner, three principal owner. But I imagine the topic that's really critical to all of you is bringing in new work. And I think what was interesting here, like when you spoke of your staff, like everybody has to be able to know everything about the profession. It's almost like they're understudies in a way. Everybody has to be an understudy for somebody else. So bringing in work, everybody is capable and is basically a marketing magnet for your firm. So what I thought was interesting also about your firm is I met Kevin at the Monterey Design Conference where he was presenting one of his white papers. And so from that, I learned more about you, and now you're, you have a tour on the AIA national event, which is really great, so being able to be out there, diversifying your interests, like, you got the college job because of an interest, you haven't done some work with them in the past. So how do you sort of leverage being able to get new work for the future? Is it all of the above, or like what's your main most operandi for ensuring sort of solvency for yourself for the next 10 years or so? Who wants to start? Whoever wants to.
I can win. I think the first year or two, I thought that I would have to plan out this, like, we need a new project by this point and this point. And then I realized that it's a lot more predictable than that. And what's kind of been a proven concept, not necessarily that we started this intentionally, but the proven concept is that good work and building good relationships and really, I think, establishing relationships not only with your clients, but your contractors and vendors, their work will come. I mean, that's kind of been the experience, is just put good work out there and leave the rest to the universe. And that kind of so far has been the case. But I would say people remember good people, and sincerity and that sense of responsibility. And I think you see the return on that.
I think for us, it sort of works the other way around, where we spent a lot of time and continue to sort of refine who our ideal client is. And if I really oversimplify it, we only work with nice people. And because, and sort of embedded in that is like mutual respect for each other's opinions and craft, transparency, honesty and communication, and those kinds of things are really important to us. And so then if you have that, there is a higher likelihood for a successful process and a successful result. And so, when we defined that, it felt like we had a sort of sharper lens in which we could see which projects were the right fit for us and which clients were the right fit for us. And so even if we weren't super busy, we would say no. And by doing that, we would hone our portfolio in such a way that we were always bringing in sort of closer and closer to our ideal. And that continues to be that way, which I feel very
We've just recently started to edge closer to that reality, where you craft an ideal client. One of the topics that I did touch on is we do have, a client qualification. Is this person, I mean, of course, do they want to do good design, but is it a person they want to work with? Is this person pleasant? Do they have good ideas? But I think as we've grown a little bit, we also have, we have staff that I do have to now, chase work. I do have to become that, classic take people out for drinks guy, which isn't the worst thing in the world, actually. Quite easy. But there was a time when we were a little bit smaller that our reputation and our previous work brought us the right amount of work and brought us good clients. But as we grow and we want to get into different things, I definitely have to make new relationships. If I'm going to work on something that's outside of our purpose, mine has to be with the help of someone else.
So how does the East Coast, West Coast kind of offer?
Well, it's only a year in so far.
Yeah.
It was a life change that Jessica wanted to entertain. She grew up in Wisconsin, so it's not terribly different from her. But it was something that was always on our mind, and the timing was right for her. We said go for it. And right now we're developing her contacts there. She's doing exactly what I'm talking about. She's going out and meeting people. She's basically putting together new friends, new contacts, new industry adjacent people. But at the same time, she spends her overlapping hours with us. We orchestrate the staff here. She does have one employee out there that worked with us for quite some time ago, but decided to rejoin us recently.
So that's a big adjustment, I think, trying to get work on both sides of the case, and then having business license on both sides, I assume you have one operational director and that will
Correct.
be both.
Correct. It has not presented itself as a logistical nightmare just yet. We'll see how it shakes out when we get an actual client over there. Right now, and we have a pretty well oiled machine. Like the Romeo was getting at, is that we all wear this every hat. Despite being a big firm, everybody does every job. Everybody works on everything. We do have someone in marketing and someone in billing, but still, like everybody in the office knows there's no like core group that just sticks together and only works on their project. Everybody has to jump around all the time, and it's made for the inefficiencies in jumping around are dwarfed by the efficiencies that are created by smarter, better, faster employees.
Romeo, I was curious when you said most of your, it sounded like all of your staff are architects. So relative to like the management of your practice, I mean, do you structure the role such that okay, somebody also sits on HR, and you sit on billing, and you sit on operations? How do you sort of divvy out the responsibilities?
It's actually mostly Lynn and me. I am the IT department. Like I fix everything. And now I fix everything at home too, because I'm so good at it, unfortunately, but it's like, so I feel like we sort of take on, when it was just the two of us, we had taken on these roles sort of naturally based on our personality and what we were good at. And then I think that as we grew as an office, it was really more that our employees were curious and they wanted to know, what is the billing cycle? How do you invoice people? Can I help with the social media, and so it's kind of been a two-way street where they sort of tell us what their interest is, and then we are very happy to sort of show them the ropes and delegate and all those things. It makes it easier for us, and then again, just being able to share those tasks and know that, if somebody's on vacation or whatever, that we kind of take a look with each other. And I think that is sort of the nature of the small office, and something that we now kind of seek out as potential employees is somebody who is not only interested in being an architect, but also has interest in it.
Can I stop the share so that the camera looks at us?
Yeah, sure, why not? I think it's interesting you say that you want your employees to be smarter than you, because isn't there also a risk of that in a smaller firm that these smarter employees might eventually be so well educated and so grew that they're ready to go out and abandon, maybe start up their own firms, and how does that weigh into your situation from your personnel? Like, is it just as part of like team structure and?
Yeah, I think Lynn and I like to just sort of assume the worst case scenario, which is that everybody will leave. And so for us, it's really about mentorship, sort of sharing what we know as much as they want to know until, they decide what they want to do. But we also really treasure our team. And so we do all these other things to make sure that they are feeling like they are being taken care of, that they are progressing in their profession, that they feel challenged and not stuck, all of those things. And so, I didn't really touch on those things, but I feel like there's a fair amount of effort that I spend creating office culture, making sure everybody's happy. I do one-on-ones with each of my employees every week, just to kind of talk and give them space to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and sort of provide these services to them so that they are happy and feel like they can keep going. But you were talking about employees and mentorship too, I'm curious.
Well, my interest was born from a glass ceiling. I was a couple of firms that I left prior to joining school was because nobody explicitly, like, no, you don't get to do that, you know, so like, no, you don't get to see how contracts are written, no, you don't get to see our billing rates, no, you don't get to see anything. But I think that a smarter employee that is aware of everything, and you take care of them, where are they gonna go? At least, you know, because unless they go start their own thing, but I kind of salad that by telling everybody not to go start their own thing. It's the worst thing ever. But I think that, you know, I too, like, I take care of it. You know, we have a decent benefits package. We go on trips. One of the photos in there was, you know, one of our trips to Chapel of Chimes, trip to Press the Light. We don't do only religious things. But they have to be pretty. But it's really like, I have no, like I said, I have no illusions that they're going to be here forever. And so I just teach them to be really great while they're with me, and to stay great. I actually do have good retention. We usually keep people around for quite some time. I have several 5-year employees right now.
I imagine the capital responsibility is a big thing when you want to start your own firm. I mean, it's something that I would be really nervous about. But I really appreciate what you talked about when you want to treat your personnel, and the resources are limited. You have that really creative idea of using your own money.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the equity issue? You know, is that, I mean, from a financial perspective, what's the biggest benefit you guys are going to? This is thing I personally don't know anything about. I've always worked for a larger firm, so I've never had to deal with it. But what's involved, you know, in terms of making sure that you make solid financially? Is that okay to talk about?
Of course. Well, from the beginning, we took a salary and to stage, and it's what do you call it? It's conservative. It's not international. And the rest of the money goes to the bank. But the way we stay solvent is by being prudent and planning. We'll talk about earlier. It's just like planning and being wise, and I would say frugal, but being smart. We, you know, plan for things where we only buy what's necessary, but at the same time, we have been lucky with good choices. I think we've been lucky with good clients, lucky with being in the right place at the right time. I take a lot of life as being in the right place at the right time, but also being prepared to act and being in the right place at the right time. Hands down, not to be ready to run. So, but financially, yes, it scares me to death. That's one of the things we need to mention. And I do take full responsibility for everybody's payroll. That does concern me. But, you know, during the course of after I hired is when we finally went train buses, and we were always busy. So I've never actually had the lost nice and sweet wondering where the next project is going to come from. I'm currently worried about that. We're not in immediate danger of it, but right now the outlook is a little bit cloudy. So that is why I'm in the data these days.
Yeah, I think even my own firm, you know, that we, you know, work with will, it's a big office culture, we're done fine. We've got a fantastic large open plan space, but we're, you know, 50% occupied. And during this current culture, you sort of wonder, well, like, the rents are even high, you know, are people renegotiating in response to our current culture? It's something that I was visible, I mean, like, what are ways to be creative with, like, you know, revenue streams, like, struggling. So that's why I'm not a business owner, and I'm happy to let somebody else deal with all of that.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
I would say, also payroll is the thing that keeps me up at night. And there's definitely been months where I didn't like pay myself, but it's been fine, like it's never been dire. And I think that, yeah, I think like trying to be very, very smart about how you do spend the money. And I've heard a lot of, you know, people talking about, especially being small, business or freelancing, like client not paying you on time. I guess fortunately, that really hasn't happened to us more than like once or twice in the entire time we've been in business. And I think it's really important to set those boundaries with clients and like, and write good contracts, as Hiromi said, where you can really hold them accountable. And I think also having that communication of, hey, we are a small firm, and so I do need you to pay me in order for me to like keep working for you. You know, I can't just keep, you know, putting this on the credit card. So I think being really honest and setting those boundaries to get paid on time and being efficient with how you spend it is, you know, the only way you can really manage it.
Another question? Yeah.
So I guess who was your, you mentioned the first partner, but who's your first employee, and then how did you choose that employee and how did you work out? I guess that's for all three of you.
Yeah, so Lynn was technically my first employee, I guess. She, the joke is that I courted her for a year because she was still working at ECD. She wasn't really sure what I was, you know, what I was doing or what I was up to. And so we had this really slow conversation. She came on board. We had talked about how it would eventually be a partnership, because again, she is better and smarter than me. And so I wasn't planning on having her be, you know, just an employee for very long. And then after that, actually, I moved, the other reason that I needed her was because I was actually living in Portland at the time. So I started my practice here, and then within a year, for personal reasons, I moved to Portland, Oregon. And so, but I was doing projects here and I kept getting projects here. And so I was coming back every other week doing client meetings, but it became, I could see that it was unsustainable. So that's where things started happening. So then our first employee was actually in Portland. And we learned a hard lesson because we ended up not paying ourselves so that we could pay him. Because we were very emotional about it. It was a friend of a friend. We knew he needed, you know, to pay his bills. We were both married and had another source of income at the time, you know, and so, so there was a misstep there. I don't regret it because I got to work with this guy who was super talented and really enjoyed every moment being in the office with him. But after we finally had to let him go, we were like, let's not do that again. And so we sort of learned these lessons along the way. But I've never really had anybody leave because they seemed unhappy with what they were doing.
Why do you think that happened? Is it because you hired someone that was like too high a level and they were too expensive, or like? How did you fix it next time?
Yeah, so I think he was too high of a level for us to actually afford what he was doing. I was sort of on that trajectory of like smarter people, right? And keep hiring people who can do better work than you. And it was great, but it wasn't sustainable financially. So then we hired junior people, but then we also learned that with junior people, it's a lot of mentorship and training and all those things that takes you away from doing the production. And so that was a little bit of a learning curve for us too. Now we've kind of gotten into a method where, again, with, you know, more people, you can divide that mentorship among the other people who have already been working in the firm. And so there's sort of a use to that. But at the beginning, it's definitely can be a rough ride, or at least a rough ride.
Yeah, my first employee sitting right there is my sister. There you go, on the spot. So Kim, she also graduated from architecture school. And I love the concept and the idea of hiring people that are smarter and better than you. And I absolutely believe that she is, everybody in my office is, but I don't necessarily translate that to being more experienced. Especially when you are a smaller group, it's very hard to compensate someone with 7 to 10 years of experience. Like, it's just not doable. So I think I look for those qualities of ambition, creativity, desire to learn, and like to pick, learn fast, like not something you would have to explain like 10 times. I think those things are kind of qualities that are long-term. And in hiring my sister and then hiring my second employee and third employee, even though there was a lot of mentoring and training involved in the beginning, it actually helped me create more systems for the way that we run the business. If before everything was like saved on my local desktop file, and then we had, we didn't have checklists for anything. Like it forced me to kind of create a system where now we have like a checklist for when you were submitting something, and we have like a way of organizing project files so everybody can find what they're looking for. So I think there's an opportunity there, and just finding the people that you feel like you sync with, and that they understand the way that you work, and people that you like to go to the office with every day, because we have a really hard job. It's very stressful, but being able to work with my best friends and my family, that to me is of the utmost value for my business. So that's how that happened.
I was not there for hiring the first employee, but I will say that I'll describe how we hire employees now. Because we've established such a strong culture at the office, that is a major driving force. So our unit actually at this office, we might be 22 people right now, but we're still very close. We don't want to use the word family, but we are like family still, which is nice. Our staff hang out with each other outside of work hours. So it's an important thing that we touch on. But the thing I search for is curiosity. I want people to ask questions. I want people that dig, find out, and they're curious. Curiosity, if you're not curious about something, you're not going to find a new solution. Because that's what design is finding solutions. And it's rarely the first one you came up with, and it's rarely the one that you ended up with in its original form. So we look for people that are curious.
Is there any other curious questions out there? I was thinking, when I was in architecture school, when I came home 7 years later, my parents had designed the old house. And I thought, I didn't really know anything about this. But it's probably okay, because the house that I would have designed for them is not at all anything that they want to live in. So I was thinking about appropriation, parents from another country, we're all grew up in different cultures. And then somebody who no longer lives in Ireland, but has lived in America longer, I realized if my parents had permission to design my house, it would be a disaster. But you all seem to have navigated that, being able to design appropriately for the folks that are your clients. So how do you synchronize? You learn as much about this person as you can. I think you alluded to that, to know what I would do versus what they really want.
Yeah, I think we talk about our kind of mission statement as something about, helping the client visualize and translate their needs and desires for their space into architecture. So it's not so much that we're coming in with dictating how things should be, but it's really, and that's my favorite part of our job is learning so much about a family. If you're designing a single family home, for instance, that you feel like you're part of their family. But trying to really, I think going away from style and thinking more about what I kind of touched on, atmosphere, and thinking about what is appropriate for this context. So really looking around at that not just the people that are using it now, but hopefully we're designing something that could outlast the current users, or, you know, it's inherited, or they sell it, or whatever happens to it. It should still, it should be personalized enough that it should still be able to, you know, outlive us all, hopefully. And that's what sustainability is to me. Not designing something that's going to be torn down in 10 years. So I think, you know, with thinking about looking around, really just research, lots of research in every project, and trying to think about what's a good fit. And then, to Robo's point, always collaborating, and we never end up with the idea that we started with. And I can't really say that it was always all of it was our idea, right? I love going into client meetings where they say something that you never thought of, and then it's like, all right, back to the drawing board. And I think that makes projects feel more enriched and layered than what we could do by ourselves.
I think for me, I'm so happy with the way things have evolved recently with equity and diversity, I think. And I think that I sort of lived in this cusp era where I grew up being mentored by people who felt like if you were a woman in this field, you actually had to be twice the man that a man could be to be able to kind of muscle through with other men who were on construction sites, or, you know, consultants or whatever. And that didn't quite feel right to me. And so I'm so grateful. I can't pretend to be the forefront of this movement whatsoever, but to be able to just be who you are, you know, be a woman, be foreign, be whatever it is, that is actually an asset, and something that I have learned along the way, and feel like we can embrace not only for myself, but also from our clients as well. So I'm super excited about where things are headed in that way.
Comments?
I'll circle back to what you mentioned when you first started the meeting, is your acknowledgement of the Ohlone tribe, speaking tribes that were occupied. And so that's one of our approaches to design, is when, you know, when we get so lucky to get a new build, we spend some time understanding the site for itself. But we also do a lot of delving into who defines this. You know, who are they philosophically? What are their, you know, what are their needs? What are their aspirations? You know, who are they deeply, other than I want a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath house? You know, we want real cues from them, but we also do take quite a few cues from the site, and we're building in that environment. Because to me, when you start with that kind of depth of understanding of the site, and create a good, strong narrative, and then design concept, sometimes it's fun. You know, my phrase is that the detail starts to draw themselves. Which is actually quite nice. Because of the way we've structured a lot of our business lately, is we developed a concierge side of our business, which is concierge side of our business is post office. So maintaining a relationship with client, providing maintenance schedule, providing new design. And you know, when there's new design to be provided, if you have strong narrative and design language, like I just said, the design, the details draw themselves, and it's quite refreshing to have that groundwork there. And I think it all generally comes to play.
Yeah, I appreciate your reference to safety. That means a lot to me personally. So I think if there's no other question, I think I'd like to say thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate your time and your reflection. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you. And I remember having this conversation with Romy more than 20 years ago, and she told me, I'm going to start my own firm. I told you that? You told me that. At an evening drinks event at the HED, and I thought, I don't know what that means, you know? I still go to my desk because I'm comfortable, like, working with a large firm to want to take care of me. So I remember being so impressed and admiring of your strong will. So and here you are, 20 years later, so now, congratulations. Thank you. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.